The mysteries of this world are becoming easier to solve day by day as technology gets more advanced. This makes mysteries that we can't solve just that more interesting. We're here to cover these stories and possibly lead the unsolved to be a little bit more solved. This is Unresolved Weekly. It's 10 p.m. You're finishing up eating McDonald's, and you leave to go back to your college to study. What happens next? You have a fine time driving back on a cold night, or something more sinister? That's the question of the case of Asim Chaudhry, a 24-year-old college student at SFU in British Columbia. He had last seen his family at 5 p.m. on July 20th, 2007. His brother saw him out of the house to go study, but noticed something strange. Asim had left his textbook and went with an abnormally stuffed bag full of clothes. He went to study and then had planned to meet up with a friend of his in New Westminster, as his friend's wife is gone and his friend had to watch their children. Asim suggested going out to McDonald's to treat the kids to some ice cream as the two men caught up with things. They went to the Brentwood Town Center's McDonald's because it was not too far from the train. After a while, it was time for Asim to come back to his campus to study. His friend dropped him off at the SkyTrain, and Asim has never been seen since. Sadly, after consulting police and after 14 years of searching, they had no leads as to what could have happened to Asim Chaudhry. Until someone fit some puzzle pieces together. In 2007, a man named Brian Brandberg left a friend's house during spring, heading home in Burnaby, BC, 13 kilometers away from SFU. But the 18-year-old never made it home, and there was no trace of him other than his car being found abandoned in New Westminster. The car's lights were on as well. Bromberg was among the first in a string of young men to vanish from BC's lower mainland over the next 2 years. Bromberg's father noted that an awful lot of young people went missing during those 2 years. One example of the men being missing was 31-year-old Ranak Manji Wajad. He vanished from Vancouver, last seen in 2009. John Collar was 20 years old. He was also reported missing during those times, but was found a year later with his body dead in a lake. No other body has been found though. Sahil Sharma, 20 years old, was a student at Kwantlen University. Left campus after classes finished in 2008 and vanished. Kellen McElwee, 25 years old, disappeared March 19, 2008, not seen since. Some of these men were noted to have last been seen eating or drinking with friends, and the vehicles of Collar and Bromberg and Kellen McElwee were found abandoned. Quote from Lynn McElwee, which was his father. If you put their pictures side by side with a picture of Brian Bromberg, they have the same look. They're all well built. Unfortunately, the police said that there hasn't been any other connection to add on other than these people being similar age. Another theory for this case is that during his time, he was very depressed. His parents were divorced, and then he ultimately decided to run away from it all. And we are waiting to see what will happen next.
Next, we will go over to Europe, trying to find out what happened to a trio of friends. This group included Lenka Fitova, her boyfriend Pavel Plasek, and their friend Peter Havil. Lenka and Pavel were only 1 year apart, her being 22 and him being 23. Their friend Peter, being the oldest one in the group, was 26. They had been planning for a while to go on a hiking trip to the north side of Usti nad Labem. The main attraction here was their national park. As the day came for their hike, they were pretty excited. They had come in to start and were greeted by Joseph D., who worked at the park. Joseph was the man responsible for the last known sighting of these three. He had last seen them while they were going through the Pravchitska gate. A few weeks later, on July 5th, after there had still been no signs of the trio, the police were called. After a few months of searching, in September the police were able to find a fragment of a human arm. This sadly could not be linked with the missing three. The search had been stopped in 1988 because there was no evidence of a crime being committed. But in the following year, a hiker found two human skulls on September 26th. The police were called back into action, and on October 8th, 1989, the police were able to find three skeletons, one being almost complete. The police claimed that they had been struck by lightning, but a few witnesses said that they saw the bodies tied up and the clothes had been torn, indicating a struggle. The case was reported in 1992, but was quickly closed again. The most unlikely theory is that they were struck by lightning. Even though that is what the police claimed happened, there is still very little evidence that this is what happened. A few reasons debunking this theory is that it is almost impossible for all three of them to have been struck by lightning, and there had also been no reports of stormy weather at the time that they were supposed to have died. One of the most obvious theories is that they were murdered. This would explain why Lenka was found partially buried. It's suspected that while the murderer was burying Lenka, Peter and Pavel found him and also got killed. The murderer got nervous that there would be more campers, so he quickly hid the bodies and fled. There was no real motive that anyone can find. It is also believed that they could have been killed by border soldiers. It is also said that their routes had changed during the time the trio died, although just like the last theory, there was no suspect or motive. Another one of the unbelievable theories is that they ate poisonous mushrooms and died. It wouldn't explain why Lenka was partially buried or why the men were covered in leaves, so it's pretty safe to count this one out. This area was claimed early by Nazis in World War II, and urban legend has it is that there were catacombs built under it. It's a very unbelievable theory, but still interesting nevertheless.
Two forest workers were minding their business in a small village near a government camp when they discovered some unusual items, mainly bones and a skull. The workers called in forensic scientists to test where the skull was from. They claimed the skull was about 10 years old, but they were unable to identify who it came from. A while later, they decided that they wanted to re-examine the bones. In 2008, the bones were found to belong to a younger woman in her late teens or in her early 20s, but they could not find any more information. The bones turned out to come from a woman named Wanda Ann Herr. They researched to get more information on this woman, and this is what they uncovered. Wanda was born in 1957, and her parents were Elton Robbery Herr and Daisy Lou Ryan. Her parents sadly got divorced, and ultimately, Wanda chose to live with her father, while her sisters chose to live with their mother. Later, as she grew older, Wanda resided in a group home in Gresham, Oregon. Something strange about her is that she had never opened a bank account or even attained a driver's license. Also, her name was never even on any police reports. The last time that her family had seen her was in June 1986. The most common theory is that she ran away and was possibly murdered. What makes this so interesting is that some speculate the murder was the dating game killer, also known as Rodney James Alkaka. What backs this up is that she had the look of somebody he would want to kill. The main issue with this theory is that he was in prison during the time of Wanda's death. It is possible that it was just a random person who killed Wanda while she was hitchhiking as well. Another theory is that she was murdered by a man named John Arthur Ackroyd, who was a state highway worker. John Ackroyd was a serial killer known for killing young women and even his own stepdaughter during this time. Unfortunately, none of these theories have been confirmed, and the person who killed this poor young woman might still be around today. You also have to wonder why no one is reporting Wanda missing, possibly to cover up a crime, but I guess we might never know.
Hello everyone, I hope you enjoyed the stories we shared with you today. If not, check by next week, there might be something more interesting for you then. If you have any story suggestions, let us know by commenting. We'll be more than happy to look over them. I'm Bruce.
I'm Jim.
I'm Chris.
And this has been
Unresolved Weekly.
Objects in the skies, these unidentified aerial phenomenon, and he says we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think that it is?
I would ask him again. Thank you.